I have a confession to make. I couldn't stay up for Tampon Tim last night. I just couldn't do it. Okay, I needed some freaking beauty sleep. That's what I needed. We are blessed to do this every day. It never feels like work. But this week, when you got to spend 4 nights watching some of the nonsense on television, it's starting to feel like a little bit of work. So happy Thursday. Looking forward to the end of the week here on KCMO. But I did do my due diligence. I did wake up extra early today after a night of rest and watch Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick, Tim Walz, who has earned that nickname, by the way, because of some policy in Minnesota when he was allowing tampons to be in boys' bathrooms. But last night, when it comes to Tim Walz, was a chance for him to introduce himself and maybe introduce some policies on behalf of the Harris administration, a potential Harris administration, to the American people. Instead, Tim Walz doubled down on things that, if you're not paying attention, sound good. If you're not paying attention, you probably believe.
Because in Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and the personal choices they make. And even if we wouldn't make those same choices for ourselves, we've got a golden rule. Mind your own damn business.
Now, the guy, Tim Walz, who was the governor of Minnesota during COVID, who mandated indoor masking during COVID, and he didn't end it until into 2021, who had a snitch hotline for folks to call up in Minnesota during COVID if your neighbors were breaking the rules. That guy now, 3.5 years later, is telling you to mind your own damn business. You know, it's like the world didn't happen in 2020 and 2021. They're acting like the COVID era was the year 2000, not 2020. And I know we all want to forget COVID. I do. I don't want to think about it. But I think what came out of it, and we learned a lot about people. We learned a lot about our leaders. We learned a lot about our freedoms or lack thereof. And I think it's incredibly important at this moment in time to remember those things. And for a guy like Tim Walz, and this is kind of the line that he's been using at rallies, mind your own damn business. Mind your own damn business. Yeah, I would like that. I would like it if you guys didn't try to get people fired 3 years ago for not taking a shot that didn't prevent the spread of a virus. I would love it if you minded your own damn business. Seriously, I think that'd be great. I would prefer if you minded your own damn business. But for the guy who was a tyrant during COVID, who is now potentially on the verge of being the vice president, for him to get up there last night and to preach to you about minding your own damn business, I found that pretty damn rich, John Anthony.
I was going to say I was confused, but of course I get the game. Mind your own damn business, but you're weird.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I got a big middle finger that right here on the thumbnail there, it says mind your own damn business.
Mind this, baby. Mind this.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my goodness.
Right.
And then it was a chance for Tim Walz to kind of put some policy forward, right? To talk about what this administration would actually do for you. What would their vision be? And Tim Walz had an opportunity to do that. What did we get? Well, not a lot of substance, to be totally honest.
If you're a middle-class family or a family trying to get into the middle class, Kamala Harris is going to cut your taxes.
Huh. Okay, well, you know, this whole gaslighting thing about, you know, how we're all supposed to pretend that Kamala Harris hasn't actually been in office the last 3.5 years. They're running this thing like it's been an open primary. They're running this thing like they haven't had the power in the White House and like she hasn't actually been the vice president for 3.5 years. But now, amazingly, she's going to cut your taxes in the middle class, despite the fact that the middle class has seen nothing but a tax hike because of inflationary policies that crush the middle class. And then the guy has the audacity, once again, acting like this is an open primary, acting like Republicans are in power. They just had this big, robust open primary, and Kamala got through a tough primary, and she's the candidate, and Democrats are coalesced, and everybody's in line. And if she gets into the White House, well, guess what? You're going to get a tax cut. But if you let those big, bad Republicans get in, your prices are going up.
They'll start jacking up the costs on the middle class. They'll repeal the Affordable Care Act. They'll gut Social Security and Medicare. And they will ban abortion across this country, with or without Congress.
I love how, taxes, all these different things, Medicare, Social Security get boos. But the biggest boo, as always, the biggest thing is abortion, which, by the way, is not going to happen. It's not. That is the ultimate fear-mongering tactic. Donald Trump is on the record saying abortion is not a federal issue for him. And if you're a Republican, you may disagree with that, but that's what he's on the record as saying. See, they don't have anything of substance. They just don't. I've watched all 3 nights of this in bulk, and I'm going to need a lot of therapy after this week. I will add that as well. But I'm sitting here watching this stuff, and I'm just waiting for something of substance beyond abortion, January 6th, and vibes. And I'm not getting it. Last night, I stayed up a little bit. I didn't watch Tim like I noted. But Kate's lying there in bed. She's turning over. She's like, I'm done with this. I'm going to sleep. And she looks at me at one point. She goes, they don't have much, do they? Said, nah, there ain't much there. And she's not nearly as into this stuff as I am. But, nah, there's not much there, as we like to say, John Anthony.
On the rundown of his list of things that Trump's going to do or Republicans going to do, what, 3 out of 5 there were not true?
Let's check again.
They'll start jacking up the costs on the middle class.
No.
They'll repeal the Affordable Care Act.
No. Nope.
They'll gut Social Security and Medicare.
Nope.
Both of those.
Mm-hmm. And they will ban abortion across this country,
5.
with or without Congress.
Yeah, 0 for 5.
I might have given him one there just on an opinion, but...
maybe you give him the Affordable Care Act. Mm-hmm, they tried to do that early in Trump's tenure.
Right.
I do think that ship has sailed. Mm-hmm. So at best, he's batting 200.
But I'm giving him 2 on Social Security and Medicare.
Correct.
2 separate ones. He lumped it in one, but 2 separate.
2 separate. At best, he's 1 for 5.
Yep.
In a 15-second clip, if you want to be generous to Timmy Walz, he's 1 for 5. On all those allegations and accusations. But this is really what the week has been about. You are a bad person if you consider voting for Donald Trump. Not here's what we're going to do to make your life better. Here's what we have done the last 3.5 years to improve your life. Here's what we can do to give you more opportunity to allow you to live the American dream. It's very simple. If you are somebody who considers voting for Donald Trump, you're bad. And oh, by the way, we love abortion. And I hate talking about that on this show. I really do. But it's all they've got this week. It's all they want to dive into. So as a result, we've got to react to it. 913-408-7957, our text line, and, of course, our studio line. On a Thursday morning tonight, Kamala Harris will, of course, address the nation. She will put a bow on this DNC. And it's only been 3 days, but I admit it feels like it's been 3 weeks. In the meantime, we got this crazy, awful jobs report yesterday. Revisions on the jobs. And I kid you not when I tell you there is somebody very high up in the federal government who apparently did not see this report. I will tell you who that is and share it with you next on 95.7 FM KCMO. And we are streaming all morning long on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Normally, somebody would get their butt canned over this, but in government, it's like, oops. Oh, well, that's too bad. Let's bury the story, by the way. So yesterday, it was 9:30 in the morning. It was towards the end of the show when we found out that U.S. job growth over the last year was much weaker than previously reported. The Bureau of Labor Statistics revised down its total tally of jobs created in the year through March by 818,000. So what that means is these aren't people who were fired. These aren't people who were let go. It's just basically they were fudging the numbers. on a monthly basis, there were actually 68,000 fewer jobs created than what the government was originally telling us. That marks the largest downward revision since 2009. So this comes, of course, in the middle of the Democratic National Convention when they're trying to tell you that, first off, they haven't been in charge or act like they haven't been in charge. But, man, if they are in charge, you just watch out. This economy is going to be humming in no time, man. You just give us a few more years, we'll get this thing all turned around, just like trying to turn around the Titanic.
We can make up 70,000 jobs in no time.
Oh, yeah. How many bureaucrats and CIA agents and IRS agents can we get into the mix here? But that's what the number meant yesterday. That basically every month when these jobs numbers came in, right, and we were like, wow, they exceeded expectations. Wow, they exceeded expectations. Well, now we know that the numbers were not nearly as rosy as they originally were telling us month after month after month.
Not just one time oops.
Yeah.
Not just 2 times oops. Continue on, not just 3 times.
12 times. Whoops. On an average of 68,000 a month. And trust me, we would talk about the jobs reports when they would come out, usually I think it would be the first or second Thursday of the month at about 7:30. And they would exceed expectations. And some of you would call or text and be like, I told you everything's great. Oh, everything's awesome. Oh, go Joe, landslide Joe. It's like, no, I know what Main Street is feeling. Talk to regular people, and they will tell you, gosh, it sure doesn't feel as rosy as these numbers suggest. Well, that's because it never was as rosy as these numbers suggest. But then you had this last night on ABC News. ABC News interviews Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, and she gets asked about, Donald Trump and the fact that he had a rally yesterday, and he talked about the fact that these numbers were revised down by nearly 1 million jobs. Worst revision since the Great Recession back in 2009. And she gets asked about it. I mean, she is the Secretary of Commerce, right? The whole point of the Secretary of Commerce, and I'm reading here from the Secretary of Commerce website. It says, as Secretary of Commerce, she's focused on a simple but vital mission: make America more competitive by spurring good-paying jobs, empowering entrepreneurs to innovate and grow, and advancing our economic and national security. So you'd think she'd be aware of this report. I mean, this was a huge story yesterday. And here's what Gina Raimondo says.
When you hear that, do you potentially think that this new numbers could be a liability for this campaign?
No. When I hear that, first of all, I don't believe it because I've never heard Donald Trump say anything truthful.
It is, though, from the Bureau of Labor.
I'm not familiar with that.
You're not familiar with that? This was last night at the Democratic National Convention. The Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo. This report had been out for 9-10 hours, and she is telling ABC News that she's not familiar with that. Well, then she should resign. If you're not familiar with the fact that the Bureau of Labor Statistics revised down 1 million jobs earlier today in the biggest economic report of the month thus far, then what are you doing in that position? Are you kidding me?
This qualifies, I think, Pete, as just simply reimagining the numbers.
That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
Numbers don't actually mean anything if you just imagine there's something else. Maybe that's exactly what's going on. This is unbelievable. And it's very telling that these very same people have spent the week saying, oh, boy, if you let these Republicans get back in power, man, oh, man, the economy is going to be falling off a cliff in no time. 818,000 jobs later, this is what you've got for me? This is the plan, John? Are you kidding me? 913-408-7957. That's the studio line. That's the text line on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Monumental government incompetence. Right?
That's exactly what this is.
818,000.
Exactly. And I thought this was a great clip yesterday on CNBC. They were talking about prices. And Joe Kernan's a guy on CNBC who does a pretty darn good job of keeping it straight, calling it straight. CNBC leans left, but it's a business network. So it's not like MSNBC or anything like that. It's in the same parent company. but they're focused on Wall Street, and theoretically they're capitalists. So you'd like to think they have a little bit of common sense when it comes to the economy. Well, this is Joe Kernan on CNBC yesterday responding to my old congressman, Josh Gottheimer, a Democrat. When I was working in New York before coming to Kansas City, he was my congressman in New Jersey, and he starts going down the road of price gouging from corporations, and that's the big problem. And Joe Kernan of CNBC just calls him out.
First of all, on the talking about competition and standing up against price gouging is something that reaches out, I believe, to everybody. We saw very tough years after the pandemic with supply chain issues. But she didn't talk about. She was very clear about that. There's a huge difference between talking about competition and making sure that we address anti-competitive behavior and price controls.
Stores, the price margins are only 1-2%.
And Josh, you know that's not what caused the inflation. So, and for you to say it with a straight face, it doesn't help your cause at all. You know.
But Joe, talking about, as a capitalist, I believe in competition and making sure that there's actual competition.
Why didn't the corporations gouge for 40 years, if that's what caused it? How did it suddenly happen? They learned how to gouge 3.5 years ago, and it went to 40-year highs on inflation. And when you talk about unifying, being where you are, you may be unifying intra-DNC, but I can guarantee you that what we're seeing in policies coming out are not unifying.
That's Joe Kernan, CNBC, yesterday, calling out Josh Gottheimer, a Democrat congressman in New Jersey. It's such a great point. It's amazing how apparently all these corporations they're just part of the problem. See, they just want to get rid of Democrats. That's why they start price gouging when they get into office the last 3 years.
That was journalism with a capital J, right?
That was fantastic work. They just amazingly figured out how to price gouge the American people during Joe Biden's term in office. It's incredible how that works, isn't it? Coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, 913-408-7957. Something happened at a school in Missouri that is causing an incredible amount of controversy. This has kids just start getting back into school. It's ignited massive debate because of a flag that was put up in an 8th grade classroom. We'll tell you what that was coming up next on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. It really is the worst when you have administrators protecting teachers who have no business being in the classroom. And that's exactly what you've got in this next story in Missouri. This teacher should have been fired here in the last week, and that apparently is not going to happen. Knifer Middle School, Kirkwood, Missouri, on the other side of the state, suburb of St. Louis. A big debate is taking place because you have a teacher who teaches 8th grade social studies. His name is Jason Kipp. And on the school's curriculum night on August 14th, when parents are allowed to show up and hear from the new teachers and the whole thing, Jason Kipp had a massive Palestinian flag in his classroom. Right on the wall, right when you walk in. I've got a picture here I'm looking at, and I'll share the story on social media as well so you can see it for yourself. But you've got this social studies teacher, 8th grade, and, he has a big old Palestinian flag. Now, it's one thing to have the Palestinian flag in your classroom if you also have an Israeli flag. Maybe you're trying to tap into the current moment, teach kids about what's going on in the world. Maybe you want to dabble a little bit in the conflict. But you got to have, theoretically, if you're going to have the Palestinian flag, if you want to tell the whole story, you got to have the Israeli flag as well. Well, no. In the words of Lee Corso, College Game Day. Not so fast, my friend. Not so fast. So it turns out this guy didn't have the Israel flag. So some parents who happen to be Jewish go up to him that evening, August 14th. This is going back about a week and a half. And they question the appropriateness of the flag without a corresponding Israeli flag. And here's what the mother, Ilana Austin, told local media. She said, I calmly approached the teacher and asked if he would consider also displaying an Israeli flag alongside the Palestinian flag in his classroom, explaining that having both flags reflects our family's support for a two-state solution. and would avoid disruption for his Jewish students. The teacher, Jason Kipp, crossed his arm and said no. Austin said she next explained that she and her daughter are descendants of Holocaust survivors and hoped that he would reconsider. The teacher, Jason Kipp, told the mother, quote, "That's your version of history." The mother responded, "Are you calling the Holocaust my version of history?" He said, "You don't understand both sides of history." I said, "We need to continue this conversation with the principal." He said, "No, ma'am." After leaving the classroom, Austin shared the details of the incident with the principal, who requested that the mother write down the account to avoid paraphrasing in discussions. So what happened? What came out of this? Well, the principal contacted the mother and said her daughter would be moved to another social studies class. Classic. Instead of actually fixing the problem, they just absolve a teacher who apparently doesn't even believe in the Holocaust. How can you teach 8th grade social studies when you don't believe in the history of the freaking Holocaust? Where are the red flags there? All over the place. But in the bureaucracy that has become public education, it doesn't really matter if you believe in facts, right? It doesn't matter if you believe in accurate history. You actually just move the student. You're not solving the issue. You're not fixing the problem. You're just saying, oh, your kid's offended by having a teacher who doesn't believe in the Holocaust. Okay, we'll move your kid around. How about the fact that this person is not capable of doing the job? How about the fact that it's incredibly dangerous to have an 8th grade social studies teacher who is on record and did not deny saying that believing in the Holocaust is your version of history as he hangs a Palestinian flag right above his doorway? This is quintessentially everything that is wrong and broken about the system. People are not held responsible to facts. They are not held responsible for their own decisions. We just try to protect their jobs. Instead of saying, what's in the best interest of our students? What's in the best interest of the kids? What do we do instead? Oh, just shift the kid around here. We don't want to, make his parents any more upset. And, you just keep doing your thing there. Jason Kipp, teacher over in Kirkwood, Missouri.
Maybe I should bust out with my Remington T-shirt or Ruger, some gunman, Winchester.
Yes.
So, hey, that's what would happen. You say, I don't want to go into classroom with this Palestinian flag, and if you were wearing a Winchester logo T-shirt, take that off, or you're suspended.
Well, they've got the trans BLM flag, right. Ukrainian flag all over the place, right, with the Palestinian flag.
Several flags, but no American.
Yeah, bingo. Exactly right. We don't want that one. So what then came out of this? What happened after the kid was transferred to another social studies class? Well, the mother received another call from the principal, informing her that the teacher later apologized, saying he was not in the right headspace during his confrontation with the parents. I don't think the guy's ever in the right headspace.
Right.
I don't think the guy's got his head on straight. Forget being in the right space. I don't think it's, connected to his brain. The principal told the mother that following the teacher, Jason Kipp's apology, the proposed resolution was for us to participate in a restorative circle to ensure that we felt heard. Oh, man.
I'm getting pissed now.
A restorative circle to ensure we felt heard. What the hell is this? Kindergarten? If Claire comes home today and said that she participated in a restorative circle, I would understand it. I would. I would say, oh, that's cute. You got grown men and women talking about solving their issues with restorative circles. Are you kidding me? This is now what we're doing at the public education level. You have teachers who literally promote anti-Semitism. And if you believe the Holocaust was not real, you are, first off, not capable of teaching history to 8th graders, and 2, you're an anti-Semite that has no business being in a classroom. If it was any other group, this person would have been fired. There'd be protests in Kirkwood, Missouri, outside of the middle school. But because it's the Jews, or if it was, of course, Christians as well, they'd fit into the same category. And, nothing gets done. Not a suspension. Forget getting fired. We have restorative circles to make sure people feel heard. Take your restorative circle and stick it where the sun don't shine. That's what I would say to your restorative circle. The mother then questioned whether they were concerned about having a Holocaust denier teaching world history. And the principal replied that she does not believe he's a denier. Since he's visited, this is great, he's not a denier because he's visited the Holocaust Museum. I mean, this is like parody out of the Babylon Bee. He's been to the museum, therefore he can't possibly be a denier. Oh, yeah. Well, yes, you're right. He can't possibly be a denier because he went to a museum. Probably to figure out how he could continue to deny that it actually happened. And by the way, did he go or did he just stand outside during some field trip that the middle school went on?
Or a protest.
Yeah.
A demonstration.
Or a demonstration. The mother then reiterated to the principal that calling the Holocaust one version of history is essentially the definition of a denier. So nothing's going to happen to this teacher. They're just going to continue on. And for you as a parent, as our kids get back into school here the last couple of weeks and the next couple of weeks, it was one of the first things I did. When we took Claire to see her kindergarten class 2 weeks ago now, I did just kind of peek my head in and out of rooms. And I know it's kindergarten, but listen, it's okay to be on alert with some of this stuff and see what was hanging on the walls. And by the way, this guy, he's so dumb, he left the Palestinian flag on the wall for the parents. If he had half a brain, which he clearly doesn't, he would have at least tried to take the flag down for the parents and then put it up for the kids and at least wait for one of the kids to report to the parents on what was going on in the classroom. This guy's such a goober. He leaves the flag up for the parents, which tells me he's a real radical, and he clearly doesn't have the brain cells to put 2 and 2 together and get 4 and understand that if he was really trying to get to the kids, he didn't even do that part right because he left it up for the parents to see, knowing full well probably somebody was going to notice it. But this is the stuff that is not running rampant. I'm not saying every teacher is doing that. Most aren't. Most teachers are just good people trying to help out our kids and teach our kids. That's the vast majority of them. And I firmly believe that. But you still have some of these folks who are just trying to implement their ideology, their political ideology on children. And it's wrong on either side of the political aisle. Go there, teach them basic history if you're an 8th grade social studies teacher, and then send them home. This ain't difficult.
I was going to reiterate your point about the teachers, Don't go in all half-cocked and assume that they're all a bunch of liberals, right?
No,
like they like to do and project on us. There are many teachers frustrated with the situation, but they're working because they're dedicated to the job they chose to do.
Exactly right.
Listen to the teacher and have a word with them before you start rendering decisions.
Give them the benefit of the doubt, but obviously be on alert. That's all I'm saying here. 913-4087-95.7. We've got Mayor Lucas coming up next hour at 7:35. I don't know if he's still at the DNC. I know he was there 2 nights ago for Obama, but I'm not sure if he is still there in Chicago. So we will hear from him and hear from you coming up throughout the morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Got one more night of the DNC. I know you're not counting. I am. One more night tonight. Kamala Harris will take the stage. And then tomorrow, you could have the biggest political moment of this week taking place when RFK, Robert Kennedy, is reportedly going to endorse Donald Trump. Now, this has been reported by many more mainstream news folks, John Carl, ABC. A lot of people have had it, and they have suggested that RFK tomorrow in Arizona, where also Donald Trump is going to be, is set to give that endorsement to Donald Trump. And it would be enormous. Apparently, this deal is being worked out. RFK wants some kind of cabinet position. He wants to do something with the Trump administration. I mean, politics is all wheeling and dealing. And, that Donald Trump is happy to wheel and deal however he sees fit. And I'm seeing some people over the last 24 hours downplay this. No, this is a big deal. It's actually a huge deal. Not because RFK was getting 10% of the vote. If you look at some of the polling, he was anywhere from 2 to 4 to maybe 5%. But in a race that right now is a coin flip, that's a big deal. I mean, literally, let's not forget, the state of Georgia was decided by 12,000 votes. 12,000. I mean, that's enormous. That's nothing. 12,000 votes. In a state that has what? I mean, Georgia's population is 11 million people. That doesn't mean 11 million people voted, but millions of people voted, and Georgia came down to 11,000. Is RFK going to move all his support to Donald Trump? No. Can he move most of it to Donald Trump? Probably. RFK, on a pure policy perspective, is still more of a Democrat than he is a Republican. But what RFK has really made his branding about was being against the so-called deep state, big bureaucratic government. And if you look at these two parties right now and you say, well, which one is more likely to fight that? It's not even close. It's the Republican Party. It's the Democratic Party that kind of has been involved and entrenched in this massive centralized government that they want to just keep growing, to take power away from the states and run the entire nation from a centralized government in Washington, D.C., and get more power towards that centralized government. I mean, that's their end game. The whole idea of states' rights and the states being theoretically more powerful than the feds, that's not something they believe in at all. So RFK making a move and potentially endorsing Donald Trump is enormous. Now, we'll see if it actually comes to fruition tomorrow, but that's being reported extensively. ABC News right here. Robert Kennedy planning to drop out by the end of this week. Sources tell ABC that Kennedy plans to endorse Donald Trump. But when asked directly by ABC News if he will be endorsing the former president, Kennedy said, "I will not confirm or deny that." NBC News putting up a report yesterday that working behind the scenes to make this happen has been Donald Trump Jr. and Tucker Carlson. They've been working behind the scenes, reports NBC News, in meetings and calls with Trump and Kennedy to negotiate the exit and endorsement. Trump's campaign considers a potential endorsement as something of a work in progress. So it depends, I guess, what RFK is wanting in return. I don't think Trump needs to give him a cabinet position. I don't think Trump should be promising that to RFK. But if he wants to have some loose advisory role, I don't see the big deal there. I don't think that's all that big of a deal. And frankly, I think that he can be valuable in that sense. We know that Trump has talked about the JFK files. We know that RFK has been skeptical of some of the three-letter agencies in the federal government. And if he wants to be involved in that, I'm okay with that. Do I want him advising on any specific policy? Not really, because he is pretty liberal on a lot of stuff. Let's not forget that. He still is a Kennedy, he still is a Democrat. But to his credit, he realizes that his own party has railroaded him. He realizes that his own party has had no interest in really giving the people a choice. If given a choice, if Joe had dropped out and the Democratic Party and the voters had been given a choice between Kamala Harris and RFK, let's just say there suddenly was an open primary, RFK would have had a great chance with the real voter in the Democratic Party. Not the big donor class, not the elites, but the regular run-of-the-mill Democrat. Actually would have been more enticed by an RFK, I believe, than a Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is a made-up caricature of a politician. There's nothing real about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris ran for president once and got 4%, was polling at 4%, didn't even get 4% because she dropped out before the first votes were cast. Democratic voters did not care for Kamala Harris 4 years ago. And now we have this dog and pony show going on in Washington or in Chicago as if Kamala Harris is this historic figure, when her own party did not feel like she was all that historic of a figure 4 years ago. They had the opportunity to make her a historic figure, and they were like, "Nah, we're good. We'll pass. We don't see much there, so we're going to move on. And, maybe it's Bernie, maybe it's, the Native American Elizabeth Warren. Maybe it's Joe Biden, but it's certainly not Kamala Harris. They decided that. And now they're gaslighting their own voters to the point where they're pretending like none of that actually happened. So RFK has every right to be ticked off, but he's much better cutting off a deal with Donald Trump than he is cutting a deal with the Democrats. But I would just say this. Just look over that shoulder, RFK. I'm just going to leave it at that because you never know who's coming. You never know. Bill and Hillary are always lurking. They're always out there. Just be careful, my man. That's all I got for you. Well said by Bill O'Reilly, who is going to be on the show tomorrow morning at 8:05. That's right. Bill is going to be here. We just got confirmation. I got confirmation of that yesterday afternoon. So he will be here tomorrow at 8 to react to the week that was in the DNC. This is like the first time in a while where I felt like I actually have a job, where I'm actually like having to watch this stuff every night. It's been 3 nights. I got one more to go. We got one more to go. Oh, man. And we're going to make it. We're going to make it. I'm just getting sick of the 10:30 speeches. Can we move these things up an hour? I mean, prime time is really 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern. What is with the main speakers at the DNC this week getting on stage at 10:15 to 10:30 Central time, John? That's crazy.
Well, I liken it that perhaps the upcoming football season and these games scattered all through the weeknights won't seem as bad now. Right?
Yeah.
They're actually going to start earlier than these speeches.
I can't imagine being on the East Coast and having to wait up till 11:30. I mean, maybe the people that are watching Jimmy Kimmel and watching, that loser Stephen Colbert are actually like into this. They're staying up late. I mean, don't have jobs anyway for the most part, get to sleep in, be hipsters, the whole thing. So maybe they don't actually, have to wake up and go to work like the rest of us. But think about the RNC a month ago. I mean, I remember Trump's speech, and most of the primetime speeches started at about 9:30 our time. And that's the perfect time. That's when you want to get going for your main speaker. 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern. 9:30 last night, I mean, we got the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, up there on the stage. And I'm like, what? They had Bill, they had Oprah up there, they had all these different people, and I'm thinking, okay, Oprah, warm-up act, and wasn't wild about that. But Oprah, then we're going to get to the main guy, Tim Walz. It's like, no, we got 7 people until we get to Tim Walz. What are you guys doing here? And that's where last night I said, I'm done. I'm done. I mean, I've been exhausted this week trying to stay up for these things. And then what happens, by the way, is I start to get annoyed because I'm watching this all night. And Kate just rolls over. She's like, I'm done. I'm out. You keep doing this. You want to torture yourself, so be it. Well, I got to do it. I don't have a choice, by the way. So I'm watching this stuff. And finally, at about 10 o'clock last night, Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland's talking. And I'm like, I'm going to bed. I'll watch Tim in the morning. So I woke up a little earlier. I pulled up Tim Walz on my phone. I listened throughout the morning because the other problem I've been having is then I stare at the ceiling for 30 minutes because my adrenaline's through the roof because I'm watching this nonsense. And I got Tim Walz last night talking about how Kamala Harris is definitely going to give you a vision for this country and give you some hard policies.
But I think we owe it to the American people to tell them exactly what she'd do as president.
Really? It's been 5 weeks. You guys haven't done a single interview. Oh, you're going to tell us. Just wait. We'll tell you like November 6th, the day after the election. It's kind of like Nancy Pelosi's line of you got to pass the bill to see what's in it. You got to vote for Kamala Harris to then find out what she's actually going to do as president. There has never been a ticket in American history that has dodged media like this ticket has. And let's remind many people who may forget, nobody voted for this ticket to be where it is today. Not a single American voted for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to be the nominee. You would think that transparency would be the most important thing to them. You would think that sharing a vision for America with the American people, especially when, the top of the ticket's been in the White House for the last 3.5 years. What are you going to do to make things better, improve things? You'd think that would be really important to him. Instead, you get Tim Walz just saying,
but
don't worry.
I think we owe it to the American people to tell them exactly what she'd do as president.
When's that happen, Tim? Like, what are you thinking on the timeline for that big guy? After early voting starts in Pennsylvania, which is like a month away, by the way. I mean, like, what's your thought process on when that starts to happen there, big guy? Anything? Bueller? No, I didn't think so. But it sounds good. And then you get John Legend and Pink and Oprah, and, you really just go for the vibes. They are all in on the vibes and abortion. That's it. That's what the whole week has been. I mean, I'm getting nothing on reducing prices. I'm getting nothing on stalling on inflation. I'm getting nothing when it comes to how are people going to buy a house? Like Bill Clinton last night.
We got to make home ownership an achievable dream for everyone, not just a privilege.
Yeah, okay, and how you doing that, Bill? What's the plan? And by the way, God bless Bill Clinton, but this ain't his Democrat Party anymore. That ship sailed a long time ago. The Blue Dog Dams are all gone, which I found quite ironic as they prop them up there on the stage.